Hello, good morning once again. If you're just joining us, if you're out there and you just walked in, kindly pick up your breakfast, pick up a cup of tea or whatever refreshment there is, and walk in here so we can get started. I'd like to welcome you all to the Mkutano 2020. My name is Catherine Ageno, and we're just waiting for a few more of our guests to get into the room, and then we kick it off.
relaxing on the beat.
A very good morning and welcome. You're warmly welcome to the 2020 Mkutano conference. My name is Catherine Ageno. I love to talk, and perhaps that is why I work in the media. I work with Nation Media Group, and I'm your host this morning. I'd like to welcome our guests here, our online audience. You're all warmly welcome. And before we kick off this meeting, before we start this meeting, it's in order that we thank the Lord. We thank God for bringing us this far and for enabling us to be here today. And to do that, I'm going to call upon Ms. Assumpta to come and give us the opening prayer.
Let's stand up and humble ourselves in the eyes of the Lord. You'll pray the way you know. If I was given a chance, you're welcome, Honorable Minister. Just in time for the prayer. Yes. Wow. We are praying. So as we let Mama Kampala settle down, let's humble ourselves to pray. God Almighty, God of all ages, the Lord of Abraham, the Lord of Jacob, we come here in front of you for the Economic Mkutano 2020, a dialogue that we think is going to be beneficial for the residents of Kampala, for the citizens of Uganda. We beseech you to give us wisdom so that this dialogue is solution-led, is solution-driven. We pray, Almighty, that you stretch your hand and calm down the adverse effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, which is ravaging the world and ravaging the country, Uganda, at this particular moment. It's preventing us to associate, it's preventing us to meet. We could be many more here, Lord, but we cannot be because of the COVID-19. Stretch out your hand, Lord, and calm the seas of the COVID-19. Let the panelists, let the organizers, the moderators have your wisdom in this very important meeting, and we hope that we can come out with a crispy and forward-looking aid mama. And in the mighty name I pray. Amen.
Thank you so much, Ms. Assumpta Tibamwenda from the Ministry of Local Government there. May we now, please don't get tired, may we now stand up for the national anthem. Thank you very much. You may now get seated. I'd like to, in a very special way, welcome our guest of honor, the Honorable Minister Betty Amongi. You're very welcome, and thank you for making time for this event. Now, the important role of local governments in helping deliver the SDGs has been recognized by the UN, the Commonwealth, and other international development agencies. However, this recognition, sadly, has not gone hand in hand with the financial empowerment of local governments. It is thus important to note that unless local governments have adequate resources to deal with this new task, they will not be able to deliver the quality services as expected. Madam Dorothy Chisaka, you're welcome. The Executive Director, KCCA, you're warmly welcome. Now, the issue of local government finances is a fundamental one, and that explains why it is the focus of our discussion. It is the focus of our meeting here today. So I'd like to officially now welcome you to the third Economic Mkutano, for which the focus is the local government financing for local government development plans to achieve NDP3 and the SDGs. Mkutano simply means a meeting. For some of you who know Kiswahili, it's a meeting. So the Mkutano does facilitate open debate, like we shall see, during the course of the 2 days, in which key action points are laid out and shared with the key stakeholders and policymakers for crucial decisions to be made. Now this year, this is a special one. The Mkutano has several panel discussions running over the 2 days, and this is the first time it is running for 2 days. And these panels are drawn from a broad spectrum of skills and experiences. And as you will see, they are from the academia, they are from the private sector, from so many other areas, and various partners. The full day dynamic discussions, which is for today, day one, will define a set of recommendations, which will then be presented to the key decision makers. I'm glad we have many of them here this morning during the high-level policy dialogue tomorrow. So allow me to welcome the brains behind this meeting, the people that have been working tirelessly to organize this meeting, and that is David Ofunji. He is the founder and chief executive officer of DERO. Together with Ms. Astrid Haas, they are the brains behind this. And panel, you're welcome.
Astrid, do you want to stand behind the...
I think I'm too short.
Okay.
Heels on today, so
Okay.
I can go. Yeah.
I'm going to make my remarks very short. First of all, I want to start by thanking everyone for making it. With due recognition of the Honorable Minister of Kampala and Metropolitan Affairs, we have online the Chairman of the National Planning Authority. We have the representative of the Ambassador of the EU delegation to Uganda. In the room, we have a representative of the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Local Government, the Executive Director of KCCA, the Executive Director of the PPP unit. Also, I forgot the representative of the Resident Coordinator of the United Nations. So the diversity of esteemed guests is at a very high level, and I thank you for making it. Honorable Minister, we know your schedule is busy. We know that one excuse that the Minister of Kampala can't have is traffic. And the Executive Director. And I know you have a busy schedule, so we'll get straight into it. I'm not going to speak too much about the deliberations, but just give you a synthesis of what the Mkutano is all about. As Catherine said, it's a combination of private sector, the public sector, and academia in one forum tackling specific issues that are instrumental in progressing our development agenda. In the first year, we talked about finance for local governments, for SMEs, my apologies. Last year, we spoke about innovation. The unique aspect of local government is that those two elements are culminated in your mandate, because ultimately local governments deliver up to 70% of services to the wananchi. So in that context, this is probably the most important Mkutano yet. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Astrid Haas, my co-brain, to set the scene from a technical perspective on what to expect over the next 2 days. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, David. And I really can't take any credit for being any of the brains behind this. That is truly you. But David asked me to set the scene because you're unlikely to find someone as excited about local government finance as I am. And that is really my passion and what I've been working on for now the past couple of years, both here in Uganda and across the African continent, to really support local governments, particularly cities. And why am I passionate about it? Well, as you all know, because we're here at a conference that is also talking about the SDGs, between now and 2050, an additional 2.5 billion people will be entering cities in particular, and the majority will be here in Africa. And that is a major opportunity for us, because no country in the world has ever had the opportunity to unleash that potential. But it's not just the GKMAs as represented here by the honorable ministers, which are set to become mega cities but also across the continent are intermediary cities. But they're also the places we don't even recognize as cities yet. They're some places still rural local governments. But if there's anything that we can learn, and I'm going to pick up on your point of congestion today, if there's anything we can learn, is that we need to plan these in advance. We need to plan these in advance before people settle. Because evidence shows it can be 3 times more expensive to have to retrofit infrastructure when you've had people settle. But also if you think about people's livelihoods, and I know Madame Edie, you grapple with these issues on a daily basis, how do you start trying to move people when you're trying to improve infrastructure as well? It's disruptive to the livelihoods and it's difficult for you and your team to be able to do that. So we need to plan ahead. And if there's anything that this COVID-19 health crisis and associated economic crisis has shown us, is that local governments are at the forefront of service delivery. In fact, we can even call them service providers of last resort. When we were here, when we were grappling in lockdown, where were people going? They were going to their local authorities. So we need to ensure that the local authorities can respond. And we now know, even I think the latest figures, is that local governments are also struggling because their own source revenues have fallen because people have become poorer. So I think the figures are now 180 billion, but we're not yet out of the crisis. So we have a long way to go. So today and tomorrow, what we will be deliberating is not only how we support local government and local government financing for the people who already live there, to be able to access public services and infrastructure. But importantly, for all those people who are yet to come, and for how we have the money to be able to proactively plan that. We now have wonderful strategies, the GKMA, Local Economic Development Strategy, the various development strategies of local governments around. But once these are costed out, these cost us, I think the figure is something like $20 trillion, right? And this is in a year where the purses are pinched, not just here in Uganda, but across the globe. We have a global economic crisis. So it's not going to just be one actor. It's not just going to be national government looking at intergovernmental fiscal transfers. It's not just going to be local government looking at own source revenues, and it's not just going to be the private sector. It's going to be a collaborative effort between everyone. And that is why we have gathered everyone here today from all these different sectors to have these deliberations and for us to reach a collaborative conclusion on how we can unlock the potential of local government finance to be able to unlock the potential for economic growth for my country as well, so for God of my country. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Astrid. Just one last comment. It is, the Mkutano is a gathering for a purpose, but purpose cannot be fulfilled without support, technical and financial, from partners. So there's a few brains that have been working behind the scenes. I'd like to mention them. First of all, it's important that we point out that the Ministry of Kampala and Metropolitan Affairs and the Ministry of Local Government are the prime partners for this year's edition. So please give them a round of applause. And obviously, we have the Kampala Capital City Authority, we have the European Union, we have FMDV, we have UNCDF, we have Makerere University, we have the local government associations, UAAU and ULGA. We have, again, for the third time, Stanbic Bank Uganda Limited, and the National Social Security Fund, NSSF, and Cities Alliance, I guess, and Makerere University. So there's a very long list of partners who have effectively put this together, and we thank them profusely and hope we will do this again with you next time. Thank you so much. Over to you, Catherine.
Thank you very much, David, for that very elaborate, for those remarks. Thanks once again. I think they deserve a bigger round of applause than that, putting all this together. And I'm amazed at the passion with which Astrid speaks about local governments. Wow, thank you so much. We are now going to hear from Ms. Pamela Mbabazi. She's online. Like I said at the beginning, we do have an online audience, and we have the chairperson of the National Planning Authority on Zoom, who is going to make her opening remarks, after which we'll also hear from the representative of the EU ambassador, that is the head of cooperation at the European Union delegation to Uganda, also via Zoom, and we'll have Mr. Dmitry Posidev. I hope I got that right. And let's go straight into hearing from Ms. Pamela Mbabazi as she makes her opening remarks.
All government representatives in your varying capacities, all distinguished private sector, members of academia, distinguished participants in your varying capacities, ladies and gentlemen, all protocol observed. Let me begin by thanking the organizers for inviting the National Planning Authority to be a part of this dialogue. It is my great pleasure and honor to join you all and to make a few remarks. I think it's very crucial that we challenge our thinkings and share ideas and learn from each other how we can indeed finance local government development plans to achieve our national development plan, but also the SDGs. But also, as the first speaker mentioned, how we can get the average Ugandan access services at the grassroots level. You will agree with me, dear participants, that a major problem confronting local authorities in Uganda is the widening gap between the availability of financial resources and local spending needs. One of the major reasons for this increasing physical gap is the rapid population growth, which creates an ever-increasing demand for public services, new public infrastructure, and its maintenance, among other issues. Now, one of the major lessons that's been learned during implementation of NDP-1 and NDP-2 was the dwindling local revenues, which are insufficient to finance local economic development and public services in local governments. And this is against the backdrop that a substantial share of the development agenda is actually implemented at the local government level. Now, local governments generally in Uganda depend mainly on the central government through conditional and unconditional grants to finance wage, non
try and get back to her. But key among the points that she raises is the fact that there are dwindling local revenues that need to be addressed urgently if financing for local governments is to be improved. And she points to the need for a national financing framework and strengthening of ways of domestic revenue generation. How do we do that? I guess that is why we have you here. The brains that are in this room today can help us, generate ideas on how to achieve this. She also points to the rapid population growth as one of the challenges to development of local government. Now, let's hear from Miss Caroline Adriansen. She is the head of cooperation at the European Union delegation to Uganda. She is also joining us via Zoom. Miss Caroline, if you can hear us.
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay, can you go ahead kindly and make your opening remarks in about 7 minutes?
Thank you. Thank you very much. So Minister for Kampala Metropolitan Affairs, Honorable Betty Amongi, Minister of State and Environment and Development, Honorable Isaac Musanga, understand the drivers of investment at subnational level, and understand how to improve the environment and the opportunities for subnational governance. So despite the many challenges, we believe there are opportunities, and it gives us a lot of optimism to see a wide cross-section of stakeholders, both public and private sector, here today at this Mkutano. So at the European Union, we believe strongly in partnerships, and over the past 30 years, the EU has supported numerous urban development projects, such as the Gaba water treatment plant and piped water supply, the rehabilitation of urban roads, the northern bypass, to name just a few. We have also committed record grant funding to the Kampala-Jinja Expressway, that includes the Kampala-Southern bypass, the Kampala Street Lighting Master Plan, solid waste management, and we're also helping a number of secondary cities to become more efficient and greener. Our Green Cities programs are guided by 4 main priorities. Promoting the social dimension of sustainable urban development through inclusive and safe cities in order to fight against urban poverty and exclusion. Promoting the green and resilient cities. Environmental sustainability is fundamental to ensure the prosperity and well-being of all. Promoting prosperous and innovative cities with a particular focus on growth and decent job creation. Promoting good urban governance by strengthening the capacity of authorities at all levels of government in integrated planning, public finance management, by establishing legal and policy frameworks, fostering access to public and private investments by the municipalities, and by fostering women empowerment in urban governance matters. The EU also advocates for partnerships between private and public sector. We have launched the initiative, the Platform Sustainable Business for Uganda, where we try to have a structured dialogue with the private sector and Ugandan and European private sector as well. We see huge benefit in peer-to-peer exchanges of local authorities. A demonstration is our support to the program on integrated local finance for sustainable urban development in the Greater Kampala metropolitan area, with an acronym which is PIFUD. It's one of the 16 actions financed with grants from the European Union under the call for proposals partnerships for sustainable cities amounting to 53 million euros. And it's also supported by our good friends from KCCIA, FMDV, and UNCDF, who are some of the organizers of this Mkutano. So the intervention logic of that program is to address development changes in local governments, but in a systematic way, from policy dialogue to capacity building to demonstrative investment activities, dissemination to other cities. The program aims at supporting implementation of KCCA and GPMA's existing strategies on municipal finance innovation, integrated urban development, fostering linkages with line ministries, overall urban policy in Uganda. So it organizes urban policy dialogues, urban plans, economic development plans, etc. So a program like PIFUD is well aligned to the objective of this Mkutano, which aims to support local governments in breaking away from the dependency on central government via multi-sectoral and multi-level cooperation to come up with solutions to the challenges of old source revenue mobilization in local governments. We are therefore excited to be part of the process to make Uganda's local authority more financially resilient, less dependent, greener, more inclusive, and more efficient. I wish you all the best in the upcoming deliberations and look forward to a great cooperation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Caroline Andresen, the head of cooperation at the European Union delegation to Uganda. And welcome to Uganda. You're only 3 months old here. Welcome. And I'm offering myself to be your tour guide. Please let me know when you have time. I could take you around. She made very many important points, but key among them is the need for partnerships. And I think, David, you've scored on this, because looking around this room and elsewhere at our audiences online, it's a cocktail of skills, a cocktail of people from different sectors that the local government development actually needs. She also points to the need to strengthen capacity of local governments. And this is where I think the academia steps in. It's also important, most of all, to emphasize the need for women empowerment. I think I should have put this point number one, the need for women empowerment in local government developments. Thank you so much. Ms. Caroline Andresen. Let's now hear from Mr. Dimitri Posidev. He is representing the UN Resident Coordinator to give your opening remarks. Thank you.
Good morning, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Allow me to make the following opening remarks on behalf of Her Excellency Ms. Rosa Malango, the United Nations Resident Coordinator and the designated official for security in Uganda. Honorable Betty Amongi, Minister of Kampala and Metropolitan Affairs, Your Excellency Attila Pasafisi, European Union Ambassador to Uganda, Professor Pamela Mbabazi, Chair of the National Planning Authority, Ms. Dorothy Kisaka, Executive Director of the Kampala Capital City Authority, members of Parliament present, permanent secretaries, development partners, representatives of local government associations, representatives of local governments, ladies and gentlemen. I'm delighted to be here on this important occasion when you, the very special stakeholders, assemble in this 2020 economic Mkutano to dialogue on alternative financing for subnational governments to implement their development plans and the sustainable development goals in Uganda. We are honored and thank the organizers for making us part of this important event. Ladies and gentlemen, the 2020 Economic Mkutano theme, Financing Local Governments' Development Plans to Achieve NDP 3 and the SDGs, is very relevant at this time when the subnational governments and cities are concerned about the burgeoning infrastructure needs and the need to implement the SDGs at the local level. I hope the recommendations and undertakings generated here will positively influence infrastructure development and localization of SDGs in Uganda. This theme is in line with the United Nations Sustainable Development Cooperation Framework for Uganda 2020-2025, which was recently launched by His Excellency the President of Uganda, and is in line with SDG 17, that among others concerns mobilizing efforts and creating partnerships for implementation of the SDGs at the local level. With only 10 of the 15 years remaining for the achievement to accelerate the implementation of SDGs. While the progress towards the SDGs may vary from one goal to another, Uganda has nevertheless made significant progress towards the achievement of the SDGs and has been ranked 18th among work and economic growth, industry innovation and infrastructure and partnerships. Notably, performance is stagnating when considering the SDGs related to poverty, hunger, education, clean water and sanitation, affordable and clean energy, sustainable cities. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm particularly delighted that the dialogue is focusing on implementing the SDGs at the subnational level. There is consensus among all actors that to be a sustained endeavor, the SDGs need concerted and coordinated effort to translate from internationally and nationally driven development projects to locally determined processes. The focus of government of Uganda and the involvement of development partners in ensuring LG participation in localization of the SDGs is important in that local governments constitute the actual point of service delivery where real change can be observed, assessed, and measured. However, successful localization and implementation of the SDGs will depend on the functionality and capacities of implementing institutions and coordinating entities at all levels. 5 years after the adoption of the Addis Ababa Action Agenda on Development Finance and the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, there is a consensus that public and private finance will both be needed at scale to meet the SDGs, and that official development assistance can and should play a role in catalyzing and accelerating those flows, especially in risky and harder to reach local economies. Official ODA and domestic public finance remain essential and should continue to flow. However, they still will not be enough for least developed countries to meet the SDGs. Private investments, including FDI, often bypasses LDCs, a reflection of real risks and the perceptions of risk, a lack of investment-ready opportunities, and weak policy or regulatory frameworks. This two-day national dialogue to further digest the flow of financing, including private investments to local governments, is thus very timely. And I would like to thank the organizers for this initiative. I hope at the end of these 2 days, the participants will clearly be able to not only understand, but come up with recommendations and undertakings for Ugandan local governments to best benefit from the full range of financing sources, including blended approaches amidst the existing challenges. Ladies and gentlemen, it's incumbent upon all the actors here to recognize the potential of local governments for national development and SDG implementation. Some of the early wins in this direction we need to cultivate include improvement of efficiency of collection and management of the existing revenues, development of innovative alternative financing options, working towards improved legal and policy regimes for local governments to tap into innovative financing options, and lastly, improved creditworthiness, among others. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, the United Nations in Uganda, under its current United Nations Sustainable Development Cooperation Framework, is financing various projects in local governments all over Uganda. These projects are making significant contributions to improving urban governance, access to investment capital for private sector, environment. We will continue to work with the government of Uganda and local governments to not only advance these areas, but also bring on board innovative financing instruments. To close, it is my hope that the discussions during the 2 days of the forum will engage us all on the need for enhanced financing for local governments, including innovative financing mechanisms for cities to ensure livable, efficient, greener, and cleaner cities that attract private sector investments for good quality jobs and services. I would like to conclude by reiterating the United Nations commitment to a continued partnership in supporting of the improved financing for subnational governments in Uganda. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Positive from the European Union delegation. One thing that has run through the speeches can we give him a big round of applause? Thank you so much. One thing that has run through all the speeches by the three people that have spoken to us this morning is the importance of partnerships, 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 and partnerships. It is unfair for us to expect local governments to deliver these services when we are not supporting them. So it's important then that this meeting actually comes up with strategies to support local governments so they are able to effectively deliver on their mandate and give us the services that we deserve as citizens of these cities and towns and municipalities. Without further ado, I'd like now to welcome the Executive Director of Kampala Capital City Authority, Madam Dorothy Kisaka, who then will welcome the Honorable Minister for Kampala and Metropolitan Affairs, Honorable Betty Amongi. Welcome, please.
Thank you. What a pleasure to join you on financing local governments. And it could not have come at a better time than for us at KCCA when we have just launched our strategic plan for the next 5 years. We are a unique local government, if I must say, because we are the others. Ways that our people at the Revenue Collection Directorate are coming up with, but it still remains a very big challenge. I'll just paint for you this challenge using numbers. Uganda has approximately 43 million people, and it's believed that 4 million people reside or do business in Kampala, the capital city. 4 million, that's 10% of the people. But would you believe that the capital city receives almost less than 2%? Actually, it is 1.01% of the national budget. Yet 4 million people find their livelihood on a daily basis in the capital city. So there is a real mismatch there. We are saying, and we are speaking boldly to government and Ministry of Finance and National Planning Authority and whoever will listen to us, that if 10% of our people find their livelihood in the capital city, why doesn't KCCA get 10% of the national budget? Why can't KCCA receive 4.5 trillion? Because can you imagine what that would do for the informal settlements we have, for the drainage, for the health, for the education? Would you believe what that could do for our roads? And in turn, that would increase our economic growth potential. I mean, it would be phenomenal. And if 4 million people are now coming to the city and making their livelihood there, 1.5 million sleep our residents in the city, that could be duplicated over the cities, Jinja, Entebbe, and all the other cities around. So we are very interested in this topic, financing local governments. We are excited that we have great leadership in our ministers, the Honorable Betty Amongi, Ongom. Sometimes I get the pronunciations wrong, but she knows I mean well, who is a champion for what we need to do in the city. One of our greatest sources of revenue are the markets, and we are moving into the market areas to ensure that they don't just bring food. Organizational arrangements around the city cost a lot of money. They cost a lot of money. Governance is very, very important point of also our journey, me and my Deputy Director, Engineer Luyimbazi, because we've just made our 100 days in office. and therefore it is very important for us to be talking about financing. We think that KCCA deserves to receive a much higher share of the national revenues, as more of these revenues are generated in Kampala. Actually, the numbers say that 60% of the gross domestic product comes from Kampala, at least 60%. Some have said it is actually 68%. But we are also exploring other alternative sources of finance, like the PPPs. I think that is a wonderful opportunity to bring in more finance, municipal bonds, and climate finance. In fact, KCCA has already applied for accreditation to the Green Climate Fund, and we are hopeful that we shall be among the first cities to be accredited by the GCF. This accreditation will open up new funding opportunities. It's now my pleasure, ladies and gentlemen, to introduce our champion, political champion in Kampala, the lady who is dealing with all the congestion challenges, market challenges, taxi park challenges, the very eloquent and able leader, the Honorable Betty Amongi Ngong. Please make welcome to her.
Thank you very much. Let me start by, first of all, thanking people who are here and the SOPs that is being observed, because COVID is real. In Kampala, we are the leading city with COVID and COVID death. We now constitute, by yesterday, we have 168 people who have died of COVID. All our hospitals are full. The bed capacity is no longer available. The intervention we made for Nambole Stadium is full. That is why we have shifted now to what we are calling home-based care. So if you fall sick now and you are tested positive, you are now isolated at your home. And you can imagine if you have a home of 1 bedroom with 5 families and you are isolated at home, what it is causing. So prevention is what we are preaching, and I want to thank you, the organizers, for the hybrid in consideration of the COVID-19. All protocol observed. Let me start by saying that. And to take the pleasure and opportunity to thank all of you for sparing your valuable time to come and exchange ideas and to find solutions on how to finance the much needed urban infrastructure and service delivering enhancement, especially in the Greater Kampala metropolitan area and also in the new cities and municipalities. This year, Kampala Capital City and Metropolitan Affairs has joined the Ministry of Local Governments and Development Partners to organize this 2020 Economic Mkutano under the theme of financing local government development plans to achieve the NDP3 and SDGs. We are entering a new phase of our development with the launch of NDP at a national level, NDP 3. At the local level, a number of local governments and cities are realigning their strategic plans to fit within the NDP 3. Many local governments are launching their 5-year development plans, including KCCA, which launched its strategic plan on 29th of October 2020. At the Greater Kampala Metropolitan Area level, Cabinet has approved an ambitious plan, and this is to enhance a local government strategy intended to accelerate local economic development with coordinated investments. One of the key problems we have is coordinated development across the metropolitan area. In these development plans under the GKMA, our people have articulated their aspirations. We did not sit and come with that. We consulted all the local governments within the metropolitan areas. They are now looking upon us as leaders at all levels to deliver on those aspirations. The consensus during the consultation have emerged that the Kampala metropolitan areas look at infrastructure as the #1 critical issues that should be addressed by cities. Why? Because majority of the people who come to the cities come to work, and they want to reach where they work in time, and they want to use the most efficient transport system and time to reach where they work. So in the Greater Kampala Metropolitan Strategy, infrastructure is one of the key strategic areas. How do we enhance transport? How do we ensure we have within the road infrastructure, you have the bicycle lane, you have the walking lane, you have the border borders, because border border is one of the signature transport for Kampala almost in the whole world. We're looking into introduction of the railway system, rapid bus system, to help transport the volume of population that wants to come to work. Yesterday, we passed a loan to facilitate and accelerate the railway transport system within the Greater Kampala and metropolitan areas. So, road connectivity. Sometimes you find you leave Kampala, and when you stop at the jurisdiction of Kampala, then the tarmac road ends there. Then you start thinking how you're going to reach maybe Natete, you're going to reach Nalia, you're going to reach Namugongo. The road becomes a little bit bad and not connected. In the Greater Kampala metropolitan areas, we are looking at connectivity. How do you ensure that the majority of people who come to work in Kampala, they live in Mkutano, they live in Wakiso, they live in Mpigi? How do you ensure they can quickly connect with the joint investment? For, of course, majority of you are always on social media. During periods like this rainy season, the drainages are not as good as they should be. So majority of the people in the Greater Kampala has brought in the JKM the issue of drainage. How do we handle the drainage system? Electricity and clean energy is one of the key issues that they have articulated in the Greater Kampala metropolitan area. There are simple things that you might think for you is a daily, at our level, is something which is okay. But you go into a slum and they will say, we need security lights. Just that, they want security lights. And it's important for them for security. because it is an area which is insecure. The other most vital area within the aspiration of the consultative process are poverty reduction interventions. What should cities do to reduce urban poverty? Because if you look at the slums in urban areas, majority of those who come to clean your offices, majority of people who come to cook the food you eat in your offices, you do not know where they come from. You don't think about where does that person who come to cook food and sell at 5,000, where do they live? Majority of them live in the slums. And we are now seeing slums, even with the profiling of COVID, are the most risky areas. So one of the key areas is how do we handle the urban poor? How do we provide for them space for trade? Because majority of people who cannot sit in formal offices are selling tomatoes, the onions, all those. But the municipalities, the cities are meant to provide for them space, markets where they are able to sell, a decent space for trading. The informal sector, those program for supporting them, how do they get cheap capital to ensure that they can get into businesses within the informal sector and graduate from the small-scale business people into medium and large scale. If you listen to the stories of those who have arcades downtown, some will tell you, I started with selling kabalagala, but then I did this and ended up being one of the richest people in Kampala. The other issue which is very important is how do we regulate fees and taxation for those who are within the cities. Majority of them would want fees to be regulated so that they are able to also conduct businesses, have profit, but also pay. So while we look at avenues for financing, we must look at the balancing act. How do we ensure we get money from these people, but at the same time allow them to survive within the city? The other most important issue, which is very important, is the issue of garbage collection. And majority of the people will say, please, you cities, can you finance garbage? Can you ensure the city is clean? Can we live in an environment which do not have garbage? How do we convert garbage into other economic viable enterprises? And maybe the last key ones are utilities. Sometimes you think there are things we take for granted. I can pay power, I can pay water at a monthly consumption rate of 400 for water and maybe 700 for electricity. But when you go downtown, somebody will say, I want you to give me a jerrycan of water at 50 shillings. You, the city, subsidize for me water. I am in the market, I need water, I need toilet where I should be, but I do not want a toilet that I'm going to pay for. I want electricity to run my business at a lower cost. So utilities constitute one of the key areas that in the greater Kampala metropolitan areas has been among the very issue that people would like investments in. Therefore, you can see that consensus on the programs, on the projects, on where the population require investments from cities and local governments, consensus on where we should invest have been anchored. We now need colleagues to focus on how to raise revenue. And this dialogue has come at a very right time on how do we raise the revenue to finance these critical projects which should uplift poverty, the community from poverty, and address concerns of the people. The Greater Kampala Metropolitan Area Local Economic Development has been costed at 11 trillion over the next 5 years. KCCA's strategic plan for 2020-2021 to 2024-2025 is estimated at 7 trillion. Municipalities and local governments of the Greater Kampala are finalizing their strategic development plan. Summed up overall, financing needs for the Greater Kampala alone would amount to about 20 trillion. Cities created as of July 1st, 2020 are also undergoing a thorough strategic exercise to develop their strategic plan, which would equally require significant investments and revenue. On the other hand, we know that financing for local government remain below what is required. Annual investments for the 5 years development plans for all the cities and municipalities needs to be financed. And this under investments in urban infrastructure hamper delivery of services and leaves a very big gap. And it's not made even more easy with the COVID-19. Therefore, the magnitude of these challenges require the thinking outside the box. And I know this gathering will think outside the box to ensure that we have a coordinated institutional framework that can allow us to work together over the budget cycle to develop institutional framework that can connect us together. And I am happy that this is treated as Kampala and metropolitan area with the program which is supporting us in automation of revenue collection, as well as starting to pilot electric motorcycles and charging stations in KCCA fleet so far and in the new cities. So I urge you to discuss and debate in the context of what are the other through which we can regenerate revenue. I therefore extend thanks to our supporters, our development partners who have supported these activities, to Ministry of Local Government and other co-hosts of this dialogue, Dero Capital, which are our dialogue curators, and all others who have joined this debate. And with that, I want to wish you a successful deliberation, and I hope to be here tomorrow to hear the conclusions of the discussions and make comments on the aid memo. I thank you and have a fruitful deliberation.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Honorable. I think I need my mic back. Thank you very much, Honorable, for that speech. You know, when a child is asking for food or is crying and they're hungry, and the mother says the food is about to get ready, even if she's just peeling, they'll feel satisfied because there is hope that food is coming. So yes, with you in this discussion this morning, and with the words of encouragement you've given us, I'm sure that going forward, financing for local government is going to be made better. Thank you very much, and the Minister deserves a really big round of applause. Thank you so much, Honorable. And for pledging to be here with us tomorrow, another thank you. Now it is the the Mkutano, a meeting with a purpose, Mkutano 2020, and the hashtag. You can join this conversation. You can get the conversation going online. The hashtag, I mentioned Mr. Dmitriev as coming from the European Union delegation. No, he is the head of office at the UNCDF, and he was representing the UN coordinator, Her Excellency Rosa Malango. Thank you so much, and I do apologize for that. Now, usually they say when a big person speaks, you do not regurgitate what they have said. Otherwise, you'll water it down. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Ms. Astrid Haas to take the center. There's a table in the center of the room. So she takes us through the very first presentation for the day. And it's about financing future local infrastructure and service delivery. Now, the global financial crisis has no doubt, we all know that it has impacted financing for local government infrastructure. And the parties involved have actually become increasingly very sensitive in terms of risk evaluation. And this means that it limits the scope of financing options. So the panel that we are going to have next, I'm hoping that we'll answer the question, among other questions, of course, on how can local governments regain confidence of the potential funders for these usually gigantic projects, infrastructure projects. So I'm going to make this easy for you, Astrid. I'm going to invite your panel for you so they come to the table. Engineer Paul Kasule. He is the coordinator program support team from the Ministry of Local Government. Welcome with me, engineer. We are unable to have Mr. Keith Kaliejira, who is the Chief Executive Officer for the CMA, but he sent his message. He's from the PP unit. Dr. Fred Muhumuza. He is a policy development policy analyst. Welcome to join the table. And last but not least, I actually did this on purpose. The Executive Director of Kampala Capital City Authority, Dorothy Kisaka. I now hand over to Astrid. Take it away.
Thank you very much. Is this on? Yes, wonderful. Thank you very much. Welcome, Madame Idi. Without further ado, because I know that we are behind on time, I'm going to enter a discussion. As you see here, we're seated around the table, like one is usually with a family or for food, so I hope this encourages very great discussion between a very esteemed panel. As we are a bit behind on time, I will be moderating to time. But I also would like to have a few minutes at the end for questions from the floor. So I will try and, forgive me if I'm a bit of a harsh moderator to try and move us through, but that we also are able to welcome some questions from the floor at the end. So, Mr. Gaia, please.
So let me go straight. I need to first correct, my name is Edin Samba Gaia. The GKMA, the context of GKMA, I think I don't need to add a lot. The first speakers have really told you, particularly the executive director, 10% of the population live in GKMA. I don't need to define GKMA. I hope you have the, I don't see the PowerPoint. I don't see the PowerPoint. Okay. All right. The statistics, next page, please. Next. Yes. Okay. The statistics you see there, let's start with the map. One of the presenters, I think it was Honorable Monji, was talking about connectivity. One of the things you see there, and infrastructure, other infrastructure. So you can see the three districts, Mkutano, Mpigi, and with KCC. I will only mention one statistic there. The 10% of the population, what does it mean in terms of what we are discussing today? It means quite a lot. And the urbanization, the rate of growth of urbanization, which is 5.8%, is very, very high. It means quite a lot. It means the population is high. It means the tax base should be high. It means that economic development, local economic development should be spurred, and so on and so forth. We are looking at a big issue here, financing these GKMA, the KCCA and other subnational governments within the GKMA, which have already an economic development strategy, which is costed at 11 trillion Uganda shillings. That's a tall order. Within the GKMA, Kampala is governed under the KCC Act of 2010, which was amended. I'm not going to the amendments because one of the major amendments is on the physical planning, the Metropolitan Physical Planning Authority. The municipalities and other local governments are governed under the local government. So you can see there is a bit of a problem there. The Honourable Minister was talking about an infrastructure, an institutional framework to do the coordination only about governance, about raising taxes, about revenue. The framework limits joint planning across the GKMA. Currently, no coordination between the different members of the GKMA. Of course, there is the steering committee. I think we shall be informed at what level it is now. What happened? Yeah. There is no fiscal and financial structure to distribute the cost, the shared costs, and the shared finance. And that's very, very important because some of these infrastructure is interconnected. There's a problem about financial and fiscal autonomy to mobilize resources. There are institutional challenges. I can't go deep into them due to shortage of time, as you can see. There are legal and policy gaps. I'll take a bit of time there. The different legislation for KCCA, I have already talked about that. The limited central budget allocation, the fiscal, and the limited budget flexibility. where you have all the money coming from the central government and it is targeted. You have no flexibility about it. A limited flexibility even in charging taxes, much as the Constitution permits and the Local Governments Act and the KCCA Act. So you need alternative financing sources, which we shall be discussing in this. Local government financing is not sufficient to meet the level of demand for service delivery. Somebody has already said that. It is been sung and oversung. Locally generated revenue is only. We see a solution in the review of the fiscal decentralization architecture and the share of transfers, which is being done by the Finance Commission, Local Government Finance Commission, and the Law Reform Commission, with hope it will provide some solutions here. Local revenue performance remains below 50% of the potential, attributed to weak institutional arrangements, including enforcement, and lack of capacity in many areas. I can't go deep into this. Local revenue collection performs to the extent of local revenue generation through lead and the visibility of service provision. Local governments have both limited powers to raise revenues, there are institution overlaps, URA is collecting income tax on rental, local governments are collecting property rates. Same government. And pronounced of collection strategy. The ED knows this best, I think. At times they take a year without collecting, and when somebody says, don't touch this. There are challenges to introduction of new taxes due to political backlash. Yes, because, but let's deal with those which we already have, and at least reach 75% of performance. We are aware there are ongoing discussions and policy reforms Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Local Government are currently setting up local revenue performance targets. Ministry of Local Government prioritizes and many local economic development initiatives have been operationalized with the aim to boost economic opportunities for business, the benefits of revenue. This is a crucial next step to be undertaken by local governments, Ministry of Finance, and Ministry of Local Government. At the national level, Uganda Revenue Authority has been leading the public accountability effort to link tax payments to provision of facilities, provision of services, accountability and transparency. When the people don't see the roads being repaired, I happen to live in Ntinda, and I drive down Remand home, ED. I don't know when you last passed there. Ongoing tax register expansion program, and so on and so forth. I can't mention all because I have. In conclusion, these panels, as you're aware, are interlinked. So my job was really to stimulate the debate. Panel 2 will go into the challenges and so on and so forth. So I can't go deep in them. But local strategic planning, budgeting needs, annual budgeting and increasing local investment gaps, opportunities of adopting municipal finance architecture to the new urban realities of both the GKMA and the new cities. Somebody with a red card or somewhere, I don't see it. reconcile and operationalize local planning cycle and implementation phase of NDP 3. Somebody has already talked about NDP 3. And the plans. 1 minute, yes. I'm doing well. I'm doing very well. Achievable innovations for local government to match their ambitions. Ladies and gentlemen, in a brief conclusion, the GKMA, big, the population is big, 4 million people coming to Kampala, the congestion, all those things. But then the legal, the institutional, the policy gaps, and those lead, they curtail the financial, the taxation. You see, these are big challenges. Fortunately, the Greater Kampala Metropolitan Area Local Development Plan was debated, and it has very many strategic things in there. And the minister said one of the biggest is infrastructure. 11 trillion, how do you raise it? When the situation is what it is. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those fantastic opening remarks and for setting the scene so ably. Without further ado, I'm going to ask Edie Kisaka. So one of the things that Eddie said in his presentation was, instead of focusing on the new things, let's focus on the things that we have, the tax instruments that we have, and let's do better, right? He showed statistics of under 50% of potential being realized in most local governments. But one of the leading cities, actually not only here in Uganda, now that we have more than one city, but across Africa, has been Kampala and being able to increase its own source revenue. I see many of your team here today who have been involved in those valiant efforts just by focusing on the ones that you have and doing it better. So my question to you is, now that we're starting to think about new cities,